Nobody expected a small ship to change history. But in May 1944, something impossible happened in the Pacific Ocean. A tiny destroyer escort hunted down 6 enemy submarines in just 12 days. One vessel nobody feared. One new weapon nobody trusted. One commander who believed in numbers over experience. The enemy couldn't understand what was killing them so fast. Even the American admirals stood in disbelief. This is the story of 12 days that shocked both navies and changed naval warfare forever. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. At 1:50 a.m. on May 19, 1944, Lieutenant Commander Walton Pendleton stood inside the cramped Combat Information Center of USS England. He was watching his sonar operator track something moving beneath the black waters north of Bougainville Island. The contact was moving at 6 knots underwater. Pendleton was 37 years old. This was his first war patrol as a commanding officer. His record showed 0 submarine kills. He had never sunk an enemy submarine before. But Pendleton knew something the Japanese did not know. American code breakers had intercepted and decoded Japanese radio messages. The Japanese Imperial Navy had stationed 7 submarines in a scouting line across the route to the Mariana Islands. These submarines were Japan's eyes in the Pacific. They were positioned to watch for American carrier task forces. The submarine moving beneath USS England right now was I-16. American intelligence knew exactly where it was going and when it would arrive. USS England was not a big warship. She was a Buckley-class destroyer escort. She was 77 feet shorter than a regular fleet destroyer. She had half the crew. She was built for one specific purpose, hunting submarines. But there was something special about England. Something that made her different from every other ship in the Pacific Fleet. Mounted on England's forward deck were 24 spigot mortars arranged in 4 rows of 6. The British had invented this weapon. They called it Hedgehog. Here is how it worked. The weapon fired 24 projectiles forward, 200 yards ahead of the ship. The projectiles formed a circular pattern when they hit the water. Each projectile weighed 65 pounds and contained 35 pounds of Torpex explosive. The projectiles had contact fuses. They only exploded if they hit something solid. This was completely different from depth charges. Depth charges had been the standard submarine killing weapon for 30 years. Here is how depth charges worked. Sailors rolled them off the stern of the ship. The charges had hydrostatic fuses set for estimated depth. Then everyone hoped the submarine was still there when the charges reached the right depth and exploded. The statistics told a brutal story. British forces had launched 5,174 depth charge attacks during World War II. They achieved 85 confirmed kills. That was 1 kill for every 60 attacks. The success rate was less than 2%. Why were depth charges so ineffective? By the time the charges sank to detonation depth, submarines had already moved. The massive explosions disturbed the water so badly that sonar became useless for 15 minutes. Submarines escaped in the chaos and confusion. Hedgehog changed everything. Because Hedgehog fired forward instead of backward, the ship maintained sonar contact throughout the entire attack. The projectiles were silent if they missed. No water disturbance. No lost contact. The ship could immediately fire again if the first attack missed. But there was a problem. The weapon was new. Early trials showed only a 5% success rate. Most crews did not trust it. Most captains preferred the familiar thunder of depth charges. Walton Pendleton was different. He trusted numbers. The mathematics were simple. 1 Hedgehog kill for every 5 attacks versus 1 depth charge kill for every 80 attacks. Hedgehog was 16 times more effective. Pendleton had studied the statistics. He believed in the weapon. Now he was about to test it against a real Japanese submarine. The sonar operator called out the range, 1,500 yards. I-16 was diving. This was standard Japanese evasion procedure. The submarine was making radical turns and changing depth. The Japanese commander knew he was being hunted. Pendleton ordered the first Hedgehog attack at 1:41 p.m. 24 projectiles arced through the afternoon sky. They splashed into the Pacific Ocean. They sank at 23 feet per second. Silence. Miss. I-16 had turned during the projectile sink time. The circular pattern had landed where the submarine used to be, not where it was now. The second attack scored one hit at 130 feet depth. The explosion lifted England's bow. But it was not enough. One hole in the pressure hull was not enough to sink a submarine quickly. The third attack missed. The fathometer revealed the problem. I-16 had gone deep, down to 325 feet. Deeper than Pendleton had estimated in his firing solution. The fourth attack missed again. I-16 had turned inside the pattern. The submarine commander was good. He was doing everything right. It was 2:33 p.m. Pendleton adjusted his calculations. The fifth attack launched at 2:35 p.m. 4 detonations. Then 6 more. Then a massive underwater explosion followed immediately. The blast lifted England's stern completely out of the water. Sailors were knocked off their feet across the deck. I-16's pressure hull had been breached in multiple places. Seawater was flooding in at high pressure. But the biggest explosion came from the submarine's batteries rupturing. When seawater mixed with battery acid, it created a massive explosion. 20 minutes later, debris began surfacing. Oil spread across the water. Pieces of wood floated up. Fabric from uniforms appeared on the surface. I-16 was gone. All 107 men aboard were dead. Pendleton had his first kill. But Fleet Radio Unit Pacific had decoded another message. 7 more Japanese submarines were stationed in a patrol line north of the Admiralty Islands. And USS England was sailing straight toward them. Commander Hamilton Haines received the decoded intelligence at Tulagi Naval Base on May 20. The Japanese 7th Submarine Squadron had deployed 7 Type KO submarines along a line they designated NA Line. The submarines were positioned at precise intervals from Truk Island to the waters west of Manus. Their names and numbers were RO-106, RO-105, RO-104, RO-116, RO-108, RO-109, RO-112. Each submarine carried 56 crew members. Their mission was clear: detect American carrier task forces moving toward the Mariana Islands or Palau Islands. Admiral Somu Toyota needed to know where the Americans would strike next. These submarines were his eyes across thousands of miles of ocean. Commander Haines ordered USS England to join 2 other destroyer escorts, USS George and USS Raby. 3 small ships. 7 enemy submarines. The odds seemed impossible. But Pendleton had proven something important in that first engagement with I-16. He had made 5 Hedgehog attacks and scored 1 kill. That was a 20% success rate. 4 times better than the early trials had shown. The weapon worked. The crew trusted it now. They had heard the explosions. They had watched the debris surface. They had counted the oil slick spreading across the Pacific. The hunting group departed Purvis Bay on May 21. They formed a standard line abreast formation with 16,000 yards between ships during darkness. Radar sweeps ran every 30 seconds. Sonar pinged continuously. The Japanese submarines were maintaining radio silence now. No more transmissions to decode. No more precise coordinates. The hunter-killer group would have to find them the old way: electronic detection, patience, and mathematics. To understand what happened next, you need to understand how submarines operated in 1944. Submarines in World War II were not true submarines. They were submersibles. They operated on the surface most of the time and dove only when necessary. Why? Because of batteries. Submarines had diesel engines for surface travel and electric motors for underwater travel. Diesel engines needed air to run. They could not run underwater. So submarines ran on diesel at night, recharging their batteries. During the day, they dove and ran on battery power. Battery power was limited. A submarine could run submerged for about 24 hours before the batteries died. Then it had to surface to recharge, no matter how dangerous that was. This created a predictable pattern. Surface at night to recharge batteries, dive at dawn, run submerged during daylight, surface again after sunset. The window for radar detection was narrow. Submarines were vulnerable on the surface, but they were fast. A submarine commander could order a crash dive and be underwater in 60 seconds. The submarine could reach 200 feet depth in 3 minutes and disappear into the black water. England's crew had drilled for exactly this scenario. Sonar operators could track a diving submarine, calculate its depth, estimate its speed, and predict its position. The Hedgehog launchers could be loaded and fired in 90 seconds. The mathematics were simple but brutal. 7 submarines. 56 men per submarine. That was 392 Japanese sailors total. One successful Hedgehog attack could kill 56 men in 9 seconds. At 3:50 a.m. on May 22, USS George's radar detected a surface contact at 15,000 yards. The first submarine on the NA line was RO-106. She was on the surface, recharging her batteries. She never saw the destroyer escorts coming through the darkness. George's searchlight caught RO-106 on the surface. The submarine crash-dived immediately. Seawater flooded her ballast tanks. Her bow angled down sharply. Within 90 seconds, she was completely submerged. USS George fired Hedgehog at 4:15 a.m. 24 projectiles splashed into the dark water. Silence. Miss. USS England regained sonar contact at 4:25 a.m. Range, 1,400 yards. RO-106 was running deep and making radical turns. The Japanese commander knew the tactics. Turn inside the attack pattern. Change depth constantly. Make the Americans guess where you are. But Pendleton did not guess. His sonar operator tracked every turn. He called out depth changes, range, and bearing. The data fed directly into the Hedgehog firing solution. The first attack missed. RO-106 had turned 30 degrees during the projectile sink time. 9 seconds was enough time for a submarine moving at 6 knots to travel 150 feet. The second attack came at 5:01 a.m. 24 projectiles formed their circular pattern and sank through the darkness. 3 detonations. Then a massive underwater explosion. The pressure wave rolled across the surface. England's hull shuddered. George and Raby felt it 4,000 yards away. At sunrise, the oil slick was half a mile wide. Debris was floating everywhere. Metal fragments. Wood. Personal items. No survivors. Kill number 2. 24 hours after sinking I-16. The 3 destroyer escorts reformed their line with 16,000 yard spacing. They continued northeast along the NA line. The next submarine was out there somewhere. At 6 a.m. on May 23, Raby's radar detected another surface contact. Range, 22,000 yards. The contact dove before identification. The Japanese commander had learned something from RO-106's death. Stay deep. Make them guess your depth. Raby fired 4 Hedgehog attacks starting at 6:17 a.m. All 4 missed. RO-104 was turning inside the patterns. USS George tried next. First attack missed at 7:17 a.m. Second, third, and fourth attacks all missed between 7:30 a.m. and 8:10 a.m. The Japanese submarine commander was good. Every time projectiles splashed above him, he turned and changed depth. He was making the mathematics impossible. Division Commander Haynes watched USS England approach for her turn. Pendleton's crew had 2 kills. Raby and George had 0. The pattern was becoming clear. England's sonar operators were better, or her Hedgehog crews were faster, or Pendleton's firing solutions were more accurate. Whatever the reason, England was the killer in this hunting group. Commander Haynes radioed 5 words that would become United States Navy legend. "Oh hell, go ahead England." Pendleton's first Hedgehog attack missed. RO-104 turned. But the second attack at 8:34 a.m. scored 10 detonations. Maybe 12. The explosions merged into one continuous roar. Breaking up noises followed. Metal tearing. Bulkheads collapsing. Then a major underwater explosion came 3 minutes later. The submarine's batteries had ruptured. Oil and debris surfaced at 10:45 a.m. Kill number 3. 72 hours. 3 submarines. 163 Japanese sailors dead. And USS England still had 4 more targets ahead of her. At 1:20 a.m. on May 24, Georgia's radar detected RO-116 on the surface. Range, 15,000 yards. The submarine dove at 1:30 a.m. England established sonar contact at 1:50 a.m. The pattern was repeating: radar detection, crash dive, sonar tracking, Hedgehog attack. But RO-116's commander had changed tactics. He went shallow. Only 150 feet deep. Most submarine commanders dove deep when under attack. 300 feet. 400 feet. Put maximum water between themselves and the surface. Maximum cushion against explosions. RO-116's commander did the opposite. He stayed shallow and made sharp turns. He was betting that the Americans would set their firing solutions for deep targets. He bet wrong. Pendleton's sonar operator called out the shallow depth. The Hedgehog firing solution adjusted instantly. First attack at 2:14 a.m. 3 detonations. Maybe 5. Not the massive explosion of previous kills. No battery rupture this time. Just the sound of 65-pound projectiles punching through the pressure hull at 723 feet per second. Each projectile created a 3-inch hole in the hull. At 150 feet depth, seawater enters a submarine at 400 gallons per minute through a 3-inch hole. The breaking up noises were not loud. Just the groan of metal under pressure. The submarine settled deeper. More holes meant more water. More water meant more weight. More weight meant the submarine sank deeper. At 300 feet, the pressure increased. More water flooded in. The temperature inside the submarine rose to 200 degrees, then 300 degrees. The crew's lungs seared from the heat. Within 6 minutes, everyone aboard was dead. The submarine continued sinking to the ocean floor. Oil and debris surfaced at 7:02 a.m. after sunrise. Small quantity at first. The oil slick expanded over the next 24 hours to several square miles. 56 more Japanese sailors gone. Kill number 4. 5 days. 4 submarines. Word reached Admiral Ernest King at the Navy Department in Washington, D.C. King was Chief of Naval Operations. He commanded every ship in the United States Navy. King read the action reports carefully. 1 destroyer escort. 4 confirmed kills. 5 days. Using a weapon most captains did not trust. Admiral King sent a message to Third Fleet. It was simple and direct. There'll always be an England in the United States Navy. The phrase spread through the Pacific Fleet within hours. USS England was becoming famous. But fame brought attention. And attention brought new orders. On May 25, Admiral William Halsey wanted England pulled from submarine hunting. He wanted to reassign her to carrier escort duty. His reasoning: the ship was too valuable to risk. 4 kills made her crew experienced. Experienced crews were rare in 1944. Better to protect the asset. Commander Haynes refused. 3 submarines remained on the NA line: RO-105, RO-108, and RO-109. England had killed 4 submarines in 5 days. The mathematics said she could kill the remaining 3 in 3 more days. Pull her now and the mission would stay incomplete. Japanese submarines would continue reporting American fleet movements. The intelligence advantage would be lost. Admiral Halsey agreed to one more patrol. At 11:03 p.m. on May 26, Raby gained radar contact on RO-108. Range: 15,000 yards. Location: 110 nautical miles northeast of Seadler Harbor. The submarine dove immediately. England gained sonar contact at 1,650 yards. The Japanese commander made the same mistake as RO-116. He stayed shallow and made radical turns. He believed the Americans could not track him. Pendleton's crew had tracked 4 submarines before this one. They knew every evasion tactic. Every depth change. Every turn pattern. Raby moved in for the kill but missed with her hedgehog attack. Division Commander Haynes gave the order again: "Go ahead, England." At 11:23 p.m., England commenced her hedgehog attack on RO-108. 4 projectiles hit. Maybe 6. The explosions came so close together they sounded like one continuous blast. RO-108 broke apart immediately. No slow flooding. No gradual sinking. The pressure hull ruptured at multiple points simultaneously. The submarine imploded. 56 men died in less than 3 seconds. Faster than they could process what was happening. Kill number 5. 6 days. 5 submarines. 279 Japanese sailors dead. At Japanese Imperial Navy headquarters in Tokyo, Admiral Toyota reviewed the patrol reports. 7 submarines deployed to the NA line. 5 submarines missing. No distress calls. No emergency transmissions. Just silence. 1 submarine every 24 hours. The pattern was obvious. Something was killing his submarines. Something fast. Something accurate. Something the submarine commanders could not evade. Admiral Toyota issued new orders to the remaining submarines. RO-105 and RO-109 received the transmission on May 27. New patrol depth: 400 feet minimum. No surfacing unless absolutely necessary for battery recharging. New evasion tactic: run silent at first detection. No radical maneuvers. Why no radical maneuvers? Because radical maneuvers made noise. Noise gave sonar operators better tracking data. The Japanese were learning. But they were learning from dead men's mistakes. USS England, George, and Raby continued northeast. The NA line had 2 submarines left somewhere in 3,000 square miles of ocean. The Americans still had the advantage. Fleet Radio Unit Pacific was still intercepting Japanese transmissions. Every radio message gave position data. Every position report revealed patrol patterns. But the tactical situation was changing. 5 kills had depleted England's Hedgehog ammunition. Each attack fired 24 projectiles. 5 attacks meant 120 projectiles expended. England carried 240 rounds total. She had 120 remaining. 5 more attacks. Maybe 6 if the crew was careful. And the Japanese submarines were adapting. On May 30, USS George detected RO-105 on radar at 9:45 p.m. The submarine dove immediately. But this time the Japanese commander did something different. He went deep to 400 feet, then stopped all engines. Complete silence. No propeller noise. No machinery vibration. Nothing for sonar to detect. England established contact at 2,200 yards. Weak signal. Intermittent. The submarine was barely moving. Sonar operators called it a knuckle, a patch of disturbed water that created false returns. The submarine could be anywhere within 200 yards of the signal. Pendleton faced a choice. Fire Hedgehog at a weak contact and probably miss, wasting 24 precious projectiles. Or wait for the submarine to move, giving up tactical advantage and letting the Japanese commander choose when to run. He chose to wait. 4 hours passed. The submarine stayed silent. Then at 2:30 a.m. on May 31, the signal strengthened. RO-105 was moving. Battery power was running out. The electric motors needed recharging. The commander had no choice. He had to surface soon or die anyway. But he had one more tactic. One final desperate gamble. RO-105's commander surfaced at 3:15 a.m., but not where England expected. The submarine had drifted with the current during those 4 silent hours. It had moved 3 miles from its last known position. George's radar caught her at 13,000 yards. Wrong direction. Wrong bearing. The hunting group had been searching the wrong grid square. By the time England turned toward the new contact, RO-105 had already crash-dived. But the Japanese commander had bought himself 90 seconds of battery charging. 90 seconds of diesel engine time. Enough to add 10% power to his depleted batteries. Enough to run. England established sonar contact at 3:45 a.m. RO-105 was running deep and fast. 6 knots. Heading northeast away from the hunting group. The Japanese commander was good. Maybe the best they had faced. He had studied the previous attacks. He had learned from 5 dead submarines. He knew that staying deep and running fast made Hedgehog attacks difficult. The problem was mathematics. Hedgehog projectiles sank at 23 feet per second. At 400 feet depth, projectiles took 17 seconds to reach target depth. In 17 seconds, a submarine moving at 6 knots traveled 170 feet. The firing solution required predicting where the submarine would be in 17 seconds. Predict wrong and the circular pattern missed completely. Pendleton's first Hedgehog attack at 4:05 a.m. missed by 200 feet. RO-105 had turned during the projectile descent. Second attack at 4:23 a.m. missed by 100 feet. Better prediction, but still wrong. The submarine was varying its speed. 6 knots, then 4 knots, then 6 knots again. Making the mathematics impossible. England had fired 48 projectiles. 120 minus 48 equals 72 projectiles remaining. 3 more attacks. Maybe 3.5 if the crew loaded carefully. 3 more chances to kill RO-105 before the ammunition ran out. Division Commander Haynes watched from USS George. This engagement was different. The previous 5 submarines had died quickly. 2 attacks, 3 attacks maximum. RO-105 had survived 2 attacks and was heading toward a third, maybe a fourth. The Japanese commander was winning the mathematics game. At 4:47 a.m., Pendleton's sonar operator detected a pattern. RO-105 turned every 4 minutes. 30 degrees to port, then 30 degrees to starboard. Back and forth. The pattern was consistent. Predictable. The Japanese commander thought he was being random. But humans are not random. They fall into patterns. Pendleton adjusted the firing solution. He predicted the turn. He led the target by 200 feet. Third Hedgehog attack at 5:08 a.m. 24 projectiles splashed into the Pacific and sank into darkness. 4 detonations. Maybe 5. Not the massive explosion of previous kills. RO-105's pressure hull was breached but not destroyed. The submarine continued moving. Flooding, but not sinking. The Japanese commander was executing emergency procedures. Blow ballast tanks. Surface. Abandon ship. Save the crew. But England's fourth attack at 5:32 a.m. hit with 8 detonations. The submarine broke apart. Emergency blows stopped. The crew never reached the surface. Oil and debris appeared at 6:15 a.m. after sunrise. Kill number 6. 12 days. 6 submarines. 335 Japanese sailors dead. Admiral Halsey received the report at 3rd Fleet Headquarters. 6 submarines in 12 days. 1 destroyer escort. 1 weapon system that most captains did not trust. The record was unprecedented. Unmatched. Almost impossible to believe. But 1 submarine remained, RO-109. Admiral Halsey issued new orders on June 1, pull USS England from submarine hunting immediately. 6 kills was enough. The destroyer escort had proven the Hedgehog system beyond any doubt. Every destroyer escort in the Pacific Fleet would receive updated training based on England's action reports. Updated tactics. Updated firing solutions. But RO-109 was never found. The submarine had received Admiral Toyoda's warning after RO-108 died. She abandoned her patrol station. She ran deep and silent toward Truk. She survived the war and surrendered in August 1945. Her crew learned about the NA Line massacre months later. They learned that 6 of their sister submarines had been destroyed in 12 days by 1 ship using a weapon they had never heard of. The Presidential Unit citation arrived in July 1944. USS England was one of only 3 destroyer escorts to receive this honor during the entire war. The citation read simply, "For extraordinary heroism in action against enemy Japanese submarines." But the words did not capture what England's crew had accomplished. The mathematics did. British forces launched 5,174 depth charge attacks during World War II. They achieved 85 confirmed kills. That was a 1.6% success rate. Hedgehog attacks before England's patrol showed a 5% success rate. 26 attacks for every kill. USS England's record was far better, 6 submarines, approximately 15 total Hedgehog attacks, 40% success rate. That was 25 times more effective than depth charges. 8 times more effective than the average Hedgehog performance. The weapon system became standard on every destroyer escort by September 1944. Training protocols changed across the fleet. Sonar operators studied England's tracking techniques. Hedgehog crews practiced England's loading procedures. Fire control officers memorized England's firing solutions. In the Atlantic Ocean, Hedgehog sank 47 German U-boats by war's end. That was 268 attacks and 47 kills. A 17.5% success rate. Still the best anti-submarine weapon of the war. But no ship matched England's 12-day record. Not in the Atlantic. Not in the Pacific. Not in any theater of the war. Lieutenant Commander Walton Pendleton received the Navy Cross in August 1944. Single decoration for 6 submarines. The citation mentioned his tactical brilliance, his crew's discipline, and the weapon system's effectiveness. But it did not mention the thing that mattered most, mathematics. Pendleton had trusted numbers when other captains trusted tradition. He had calculated firing solutions while others relied on experience. He had predicted submarine movements while others guessed. The numbers had been right. USS England continued escort duty through summer 1944. Convoy protection. Carrier screening. Anti-submarine patrols. She never found another submarine. She never fired Hedgehog in combat again. On October 31, 1944, a kamikaze aircraft hit England off Leyte Gulf in the Philippines. The bomb penetrated the forward engine room. 37 crew members were killed. 25 more were wounded. The damage was catastrophic. Repairs would take 6 months and cost more than building a new ship. The Navy decided USS England was not worth saving. She was towed to Manus Island. Workers stripped her of useful equipment. The Navy sold her for scrap in November 1946. The ship that had sunk 6 submarines in 12 days ended her life as razor blades and tin cans. But the record stood. Still stands today. No ship has matched it. 80 years later, USS England remains the greatest submarine killer in naval history. Admiral King had sent that message: there'll always be an England in the United States Navy. The Navy kept that promise. Sort of. In October 1963, a guided missile destroyer leader named USS England was commissioned. Hull number DLG-22, later reclassified as CG-22. She served from 1963 until 1994. 31 years. Longer than the original England lasted. But when CG-22 was decommissioned in 1994, the name England disappeared from the fleet. Admiral King's promise was broken. There has not been a USS England since 1994. The original Hedgehog launcher sits in storage at the National Museum of the United States Navy in Washington, D.C. rusted. Forgotten. Most visitors walk past without noticing. The placard mentions the weapon's success rate. It does not mention USS England. It does not mention Walton Pendleton. It does not mention the 12 days that proved the system worked. Japanese records recovered after the war confirmed the 6 kills: I-16, RO-106, RO-104, RO-116, RO-108, RO-105. Each submarine's final position matched England's attack coordinates exactly. 335 sailors confirmed dead. The Japanese Navy never understood what killed them so fast. Their action reports mentioned explosions above and flooding below. Death within minutes. But nobody survived to describe the circular pattern of projectiles, the contact fuses, or the forward-throwing mortars that maintained sonar contact throughout the attack. The British developed Hedgehog. The Americans perfected it. USS England proved it. But history remembers aircraft carriers, battleships, and fleet destroyers. The big ships with the big guns. Destroyer escorts were expendable. Cheap to build. Easy to replace. The Navy built 563 destroyer escorts during World War II. Most were scrapped within 5 years of peace. USS England lasted 2 years after the war ended. Scrapped at age 3.5. The ship that sank 6 submarines in 12 days was not considered worth the metal she was made from. Walton Pendleton survived the war. He was promoted to commander. He was given command of an escort division in Alaska. He spent the final year of the war hunting Japanese submarines in the North Pacific. He never found any. The war ended in August 1945. Pendleton retired from the Navy in 1961 after 34 years of service. He died in 1973 at age 66. He was buried at Arlington National Cemetery. His gravestone mentions the Navy Cross. It does not mention the 6 submarines. It does not mention the 12 days that changed naval warfare. But the lesson remains. Pendleton trusted mathematics when others trusted tradition. He believed in numbers when others believed in experience. He calculated precisely when others guessed. And for 12 days in May 1944, he and his crew aboard a tiny destroyer escort accomplished something no ship has matched in 80 years. 6 submarines. 12 days. 335 enemy sailors. One small ship that refused to quit. The Japanese could not believe it. The American Navy was shocked. And history has mostly forgotten. But the record stands. USS England. The greatest submarine killer in naval history.